Hello, everyone. I'm Black Marvin. I'm a progressive psychedelic trance artist, and I'm also a teacher for electronic music. It's very exciting because there's a new plugin from FL Studio. It's called Frequency Shifter, and that's pretty much what it does. It shifts frequency in a very specific manner. It's very Psy-Trance friendly, and we're going to have a look at it. I'm going to do an overview of the plugin, and I'm going to leave you with some couple of tips and ways I would use it in Psy-Trance. If you want more content like this, you want the latest updates and some professional sound design tips and tricks, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And in our case, let's go see Frequency Shifter right now.
So this is Frequency Shifter. It shifts frequency, that's no surprise, but it's different from other frequency shifters on the market. I'm thinking, for example, the one from Kilohertz. And that's because of how it processes sound. This one has, I would say, some flangy and flanger phaser behavior to it. And again, yeah, that's because of the algorithm behind it. And that's actually one of his strengths because you can make it sound really Psy-Trance friendly. For the moment, I will be working with the default preset from Thorn. I like to work with simple saw wave when I demonstrate effects plugins like this because you can really hear the power of it because of the simplicity of the source. So when you open Frequency Shifter, that's what you have. You have, of course, the frequency knob. There's a very important part of the plugin here, which is the range. By default, it's 200 hertz. So that's not a big shift. If you want a big shift, you can go on 20 kilohertz. So that sounds like this. And finally, there's the tempo mode, which is, you can hear that there's some shifting, but it's less noticeable. In order to accentuate that, I'm gonna put more feedback. And you can already see what I'm talking about when I say it's going to be useful for Psy-Trance because it already gives us that sort of watery texture. You can also adjust the left and right phase, so it's gonna treat the signal differently from left and right, and it gives us that panning effect. There is a start phase right here that you can adjust, so it's basically gonna adjust the start of the cycle. Here you can adjust the shape of the left and right channel individually, so you can create again some sort of difference between the left and right channel, and that can be somewhat pleasing or somewhat useful. You can also link them. So here we have three types. We have by default is the FREQ shifter. So it's the frequency shifter, and there's also an HQ mode, which is basically going to reduce aliasing. So that might be useful, but you also might want to stay with this one. It sounds similar, and you can choose which one you want. Very similar, but you can hear that there's a slight difference. And finally, last one but not the least, you can put it in ring mod. So you can already hear that you can do some really creative things. We're just on the default preset, and just with the ring modulation here, it's very interesting. You could do some sort of zap sweep. I added my favorite delay outer space in the mix here, and so we can kind of preview more in the Psy-Trance mindset. Chain here is basically you can route signal into the frequency shifter when it's in ring modulation mode. Honestly, I've been able to get some crazy results with that. I'm gonna show you what I've been able to do so far. But there might be some more interesting ways and more interesting result that you can have. But this is what I did so far. So I have a sidechain signal here, which is that lead here from DS Torn. And basically, this signal is sidechained through the frequency shifter here. So when I hit a note, it sounds like this. So it's kind of ring modulating the original signal here with the source I'm feeding it by sidechain. So the source is what you've heard on that instance of Thorn. So now how I would use it in a Psy-Trance context, for sure, I really like these kind of shifts here. So I'm gonna do two things. I'm gonna create a zap and I'm gonna create some sort of grid. I'm gonna create an animation with that. So I have this small action here that you basically have the frequency shifting, have that course, and that note plays it. Let's see if I can double it. So a little summary of what's going on here. I have a frequency shifter. It's just the first one, uh, sort of going down, and it creates a nice effect. The first effect you saw, and I stacked another one, which kind of plays more on some high feedback action here, but I put the mix at 50% because it was quite intense. But it's really important to understand that this one is shifting the result of this one. So that's why it creates such an intense texture. And just remember that this is the original signal. Now to finalize the zap, let's see how distortion would act on this. So I added Faturator here and it gives a nice result. I'm going to try to EQ the signal before the distortion and see if I can get something cleaner. So the idea of EQing before the distortion really gives a cleaner signal. And there was some sort of like a bottleneck here in terms of frequencies, and that really cleaned up the signal. And finally, I add an OTT right here at the end of the chain. Um, so it's just boosts all the level, OTT style. So that's the final result for the zap. Now let's work on the grid. And again, I'm going to start with the same thing. I'm going to start with very, just a very clean default signal. So I'm just going to sequence sort of a small greedy sequence. So that's a good base for what we're trying to achieve, although it's not very steering towards a grid type synth more than some sort of lead. I'm going to add a fatuator here. I think I'm going to dial in sort of the same EQ that I had. And let's see if I can have some sort of stereo action. I'm going to bring in another frequency shifter after the fatuator. And this one kind of brings a nice blurry texture that I like. Why not another fatuator? I'm going to bring in a disperser by kilohertz. It brings that special disperser flavor. And instead of bring back outer space, I bring this time timeless stooge set up to one of my favorite preset. And I think I'm going to stop there so far, but kind of gives you a good idea of what it can do on a lead.
And that's it. That was Frequency Shifter, the latest tool for FL Studio. I really like how the software keeps being bonified from version to version. I'm sure there's even more content coming up soon. I'm really excited. And that's one thing I like about FL Studio, among other things. If you feel you need one-to-one mentoring, you want more knowledge, more content, consider joining my community of students. The link is in the description, and the crew is getting bigger and bigger every month. And that's a really fun environment to learn. Until then, I will see you in another video. Happy producing.